Hey everyone, welcome. We're about to dive into something pretty incredible today. It's all based on a really eye-opening report that was put together for the US Congress, and it exposes this massive, sophisticated information war. The whole thing revolves around a conflict called Operation Sindoor. And what this report shows is that the battle for what people believed happened, well, that kept going along after the actual fighting was over.
So right at the core of this report from the US-China Economic and Security Review Commission is a real bombshell. It basically lays out how China and Pakistan teamed up for this huge, coordinated disinformation campaign. And their goal? To completely change the story, to rewrite the entire narrative of what went down during that border conflict with India, Operation Sindoor.
All right, so let's really break down what this U.S. report uncovered. It shows that, right after the military operation ended, this incredibly sophisticated propaganda machine just kicked into high gear. And it had one very, very specific goal: to control the story that the rest of the world was hearing. And here's the real kicker, the why behind it all. Straight from the U.S. Commission's report. This wasn't just about winning some online arguments or scoring political points. No, this was a massive strategic play, both commercial and military. The main goal was to sell more Chinese weapons by making the Western-made jets that the Indian Air Force was using look bad.
So you're probably wondering, how did they actually do it? Well, the report lays out this whole propaganda playbook, and it had these really clear two-part objectives.
I mean, the strategy was pretty straightforward, really. It was a classic two-pronged attack. On one hand, you have them trying to trash the French-made Rafale jets that India uses, calling them overrated, ineffective, you name it. And on the other hand, at the very same time, they're pushing their own fighters, like the J-10, as these amazing, superior, and now supposedly battle-proven machines.
And look, this wasn't just a few trolls posting random stuff online. No way. The U.S. report makes it clear this was a highly structured, well-funded campaign. We're talking about entire networks of fake social media accounts, passing around AI-generated pictures of fake wreckage, and then pumping a ton of money into paid ads to make sure everyone saw it. It went right to the top, too, involving state actors. In fact, French intelligence even reported that Chinese embassies were getting in on the action.
But, there was one major problem with this whole beautifully crafted story. It started to completely fall apart the second anyone looked at it too closely. The claims they were making just didn't match up with what was actually happening on the ground.
And this really boiled down to one simple but very powerful question that analysts started asking. If the Chinese J-10 fighter was this incredible battle-winning machine like they claimed, then where were all the buyers? You'd expect countries to be lining up around the block to get their hands on one. But crickets. They just weren't.
And you can see this disconnect perfectly with what happened with Indonesia. A huge story being pushed by all these pro-China and Pakistani accounts was that Indonesia was so blown away by the J-10's performance that they were actually canceling their deal for French Rafales to buy the J-10 instead. The reality on the ground? Totally different. Indonesia came out and officially said, nope, not happening. And now they've started getting their new Rafale jets delivered.
In fact, the only international customer for the J-10 is, you guessed it, Pakistan. And even that sale wasn't exactly a ringing endorsement. It was more of a purchase made out of necessity, really, because they couldn't get their hands on the newer American F-16s they wanted.
Okay, so let's shift gears from all the online noise and look at the hard evidence. What does it tell us about what really happened on the ground?
So the main claim, the big headline from the propaganda campaign, was that the Pakistani Air Force, flying its shiny new Chinese jets, had totally owned the skies. But the actual verifiable evidence? Well, that painted a completely different picture.
And here's the thing, nobody had to take anyone's word for it. You could literally see it from space. Satellite images taken after the fighting showed massive destruction across Pakistani Air Force assets. We're talking seriously damaged air bases, radar sites completely wiped out, aircraft hangars destroyed, and runways just full of craters, totally unusable. And all that damage revealed a really critical weakness. Pakistan's air defenses, a lot of which were made in China, just failed. Completely. They couldn't stop the super-fast, supersonic missiles like the BrahMos, but they also couldn't stop the slower, subsonic missiles like the Scalp. The fact that they were getting hit by both fastballs and curveballs and couldn't stop either, that points to a total, systemic failure.
So when you step back and look at this whole thing, what's the big takeaway? It tells us that in any modern conflict, the fight for what people believe, the battle for perception, is every bit as important as the actual fight on the ground.
I mean, what China and Pakistan pulled off here was a textbook disinformation campaign. It was coordinated, it was deliberate, and it had a crystal clear strategic goal:
shape how the world saw the event, and at the end of the day, sell more military hardware.
And this really gets to the heart of the report's conclusion. Because even though we're talking about the truth now, back when all this propaganda was flooding the internet, India was really on the back foot. They were caught at a huge strategic disadvantage in this information war, and they were struggling to push back against this tidal wave of coordinated lies as it was happening.
Which kind of leaves us all with a pretty heavy question, doesn't it? This campaign used AI-generated fakes and weaponized social media to incredible effect. And as these tools get even better, even more powerful, and easier for anyone to use, it really makes you wonder, are any of us actually ready for what the next information war is going to look like?